10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 202. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 202 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. Hope everybody out there is doing well in these crazy, weird times that we are living through right now. I'm making this podcast on Sunday, March 15th, and not sure where we're going to be at by the time Friday rolls around. And just wanted to let all of you know that I am thinking about you out there. Hope that you are healthy and staying safe, and hopefully things are getting better by the time this comes out rather than worse, and keeping everybody in my thoughts. So we are going to try to just talk about jazz today, give you maybe a little bit of a distraction, something that you can kind of put your mind towards in these strange times. So as always, I wanted to give a shout out to the new Patreon members this week. Thank you to Preston, Gustavo, Charles, Alan, and John. Thank you guys for signing up and supporting the podcast. You know, a lot of musicians are going through really tough times. People that work exclusively around large gatherings. And of course, that is not happening at this time. I know a lot of my musician friends have had, up to 2 months of engagements canceled, and that's income that we all rely on. I know myself, I've had about 10 engagements canceled. So if you are out there and you are able to, please go and support your favorite artists by buying their albums and buying anything that they have out there. Again, only if you're financially able. I know a lot of you out there are probably going through financial tough times. But musicians and performers are in an especially tough spot right now and not sure what is going to happen. So support them if you can, and thank you to everybody that's supporting this show. Really means a lot to me, and it's going to really help us all get through these uncertain times. And we all understand why they're doing it, and we support the decisions to cancel all of these large gatherings. It definitely is the smart thing to do. It's just really tough when your income depends on a whole bunch of people getting together in one place and listening to some music. So thank you everybody who's supporting. Do more if you can. Let's keep our artist and creative community alive through this very strange occurrence that's happening. So if you'd like to support this show and this particular artist, you can go to our Patreon site, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, sign up. Your support only costs you $3 a month, and that goes a long way towards keeping the show happening and keeping this particular musician's career alive. All right, let's get into the show. That's the end of my rant on that, but I do think it's important. Okay, so we're going to continue our series on the Rhythm Changes Bridge. We're going to get pretty wild today. We're going to talk about some really kind of advanced stuff, some strange sounds that I don't know if you're going to like them or not, but they're sounds that I enjoy, and they help me reach a little bit further when it comes to making this bridge as interesting sounding as possible. So the first exercise for this week is a continuation of the exercise we talked about last week, the second one, where we were doing a tritone substitution over the second bar of every chord. Now what we're going to do is we are going to extend that tritone substitution to a full 2-5-1 sound. So if you look at your PDF for this week, you are going to notice that we're going to start with the regular chord. So remember, we're in B-flat rhythm changes here. So in concert pitch, the first chord of the bridge is D7. And then what we did for the second exercise of last week is over the second bar, we did a tritone substitution of that chord. So we went up a tritone from D, that gave us A flat 7. And then we resolved that to G7. But now what we're going to do is in the second half of the first bar, we're going to put the 2 chord of that tritone substitution. So if A flat 7 is the 5 chord, now we are going to use an E flat minor 7 chord in the second half of that first bar. So the progression would look like this. This is the first 2 bars of the bridge. It would be D7, and then in the second half of that bar, 2 beats later, we would put an E flat minor 7 chord. Then on the downbeat of the second bar, we're going to go to that A flat 7 chord. So basically it's like we're doing a 2-5 in the key of D flat, but we're actually going to resolve that to G. And what this does is this actually just extends the tension back 2 more measures. So basically what we're doing is we're just adding 2 more bars of tension to this sound. And that is something that we like to do. We like to add more and more and more tension wherever we can, because we know that that's just going to make the sound more interesting, and it's going to make the release in the third bar of the bridge a little bit more satisfying. So the chords are going to follow that pattern all the way through the 8 bars. We're just extending that tension back with the 2 chord, a tritone, away from where we're going. Hopefully that makes sense. It's going to make a lot more sense if you have the PDF in front of you. And I think when you hear it, you're going to hear that tension being extended from where we put it last week. So let's check out how this sounds over the Rhythm Changes bridge, substituting all these chords in. Now remember, the backing track that I'm using is not doing any of these substitutions, which is probably going to happen when you're playing with a band. They're really not going to be able to, telepathically assume what you're going to do. So a lot of these sounds are just going to come over the regular chords, and that's actually what makes them so great, because all those notes are going to clash. We're going to be hearing a completely different harmonic structure over what the rhythm section is playing, and that's what really makes this so wonderful. So here's what exercise number 1 sounds like with these extended tritone substitution 2-5-1s. Pretty out, isn't it? So one thing that I want to let you know is that when you're inserting all of these chord substitutions, I want you to be as clear as possible with those substitutions, right? Meaning that if you look at the example, I'm really just outlining the chords. I'm not doing anything crazy over those substitute chords. I'm mostly just playing arpeggios or really, really simple and clear scale segments based off of those substitute chords. Here's the cool thing about doing substitutions. You don't really have to work that hard. The chords are actually doing the work for you, meaning that the harmony that you're superimposing over the regular changes is really the interesting part. So all you need to do is express those chords very, very clearly, and the harmony does the work for you. So don't try to get too complicated. Don't work too hard. Just simply arpeggiate these or play very, very clear scale segments over these substitute changes. It's kind of a nice thing. It's like one thing in jazz that we don't have to do. Work really hard when we're using these chords. So check out the sound of that one more time and just listen to how I'm very clearly outlining that substitute harmony. All right, so hopefully you can hear that. Very simple lines, but the chords are really the things that are getting more complicated. All right, let's move on to the second one. So this one is based off of Coltrane changes. Now, if you remember, we've done episodes on Coltrane changes. You know that it moves down in descending major thirds. And let me explain sort of what I'm doing here, because this can be pretty confusing. In fact, it took me a while to kind of write this out because I know the sound of it, but to get it down on paper is a little bit confusing. So if you think about the first chord of the bridge, D7, we're still going to use that. We like to start with something that's inside, then we go outside, then we come back inside. So if this is moving down in major thirds, we need to get to the key of G, right? Because in bar 3, we need to get to that G. We need to resolve to that G chord. So if we think about a chord, a major third up from G, because remember, we're moving backward. So if the progression moves down in major thirds, if we're going backward from G, we need to move up a major third. I know how confusing this is, but stick with me. So we need to move up a major third, which means that we need to move to the key of B. So what's the dominant of the key of B? It is F sharp 7, which is exactly what we have 2 beats before that. So we're working our way backward from G, and we need to go to the key, a major third up from G. B, dominant of that is F sharp. So the progression looks like this: D7 to F sharp 7 to B major 7. Then we go to D7 again, because we're moving to the key of G, so we want a dominant of that key, and then we finally resolve it to the key of G. Did I lose you? I wouldn't be surprised if I did, but if you think about this for long enough, and that's one of the things you're going to have to do, you're going to have to really sit down and think about this, right? It's not just something that you can pick up instantaneously. I wish it worked that way, but it doesn't. So what I do when I finally get to the key of G is I let it rest in the key of G for a quick second, for an entire bar, so we get that feeling of resolution before we move on to the next. So all I did was I removed the dominant of the 3 in the 3rd and 4th bars of the bridge, and I simply just removed that chord, but then did the same thing moving forward. So you're gonna have to sit with that for a little while. Again, it's one of those things that, it's I can explain it to you, but you're really gonna have to get in there, get your hands dirty, and figure out how this works. But what I really want you to hear is the sound of this. And if you need to, go back and review that episode on Coltrane changes. If you go to our website and use the little search box on the right-hand side, you could just type in Coltrane changes and that episode will come up if you want a review of this. Now remember, this harmony is really dense, right? So the harmony, again, is doing the work for us. We don't really need to do that much. We just need to outline the chords that I've specified in this exercise. But I really love the sound of this. Anytime I can use those Coltrane changes, I love doing it because it's just such a interesting harmonic motion that moves through a tune when you could substitute Coltrane changes in. So let's check out what it sounds like. Enough of me blabbing. Let's check out what the actual sound of these chord substitutions are. It's a pretty wild sound, isn't it? Really love that. Now, I understand that that might be a little bit more advanced than a lot of you feel comfortable with, but that's okay. Just file it away. It's just something that you can come back to later when you eventually get to that point and you feel comfortable starting to do stuff like this. You could pull this sheet out, start working on it again. All right, this was a long episode, but I really wanted to try to explain that stuff as much as I could, even though I still feel like I didn't do a very good job of it. It's just tough sometimes to do this over audio. But let me know if you have any questions. There may be some questions on this. You can email me 10minutejazzlesson@gmail.com, or you can leave a question in the 10 Minute Jazz Lesson Community Facebook group. Either one of those places, great way to get in touch with me. I'd rather have you drop it in the Facebook group because then all of us can kind of talk about it together, and there might be other people that have the same questions as you. So that about does it for this episode. Next week, we're going to write 3-chorus etude over rhythm changes, and we're going to use some of these substitutions so that you can hear the progression from fairly simple to very complicated. Hope you all enjoyed the episode. I really hope all of you are doing well out there. I know it's really tough times for everybody, but hang in there. We'll get through this, and I am thinking about you. If you want to support the show, keep this artist's income coming in through these tough times, you could do that by going to 10minutejazzlesson.com, clicking on one of the Patreon banners, and donating your $3 a month, doing your small part to keep the show coming at you, and keeping this artist's life as normal as possible until we come out on the other side of this. All right, everybody, have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.